Every week, the Payne family cuts straight to the real financial story.
The one question, Bob, everyone's asking is, are we in an artificial intelligence bubble? You've been through boom and bust. What do you think?
No hype, no myths. Just what actually matters to your money.
Does feel very similar to what we experienced in the 90s. Where are we, though? Are we in 1995, 1997, 1999?
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
It's the Joe Concha Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday morning show. Now, here's Joe Concha.
Everybody, just spilled coffee on myself, and I'm wearing a white St. Louis Blues jersey, so that's annoying. Thankfully, this is audio only, so you don't have to endure a big brown spot all over my chest right now. Anyway, sharing, this is called TMI, Too Much Information. Thanks so much for joining us today on this, well, it's okay, for January. Not too cold. The snow, we got some in December, but, been kind of dry so far here in January, and I'm looking at the 14-day forecast, and there is nothing on the horizon. So maybe we're dodging a bullet for now, unlike the Democratic Party, of course. That's called a pivot, because Harry Enton, who's the quite demonstrative pollster over on CNN, I don't mind him only because he will share polls that are actually not good for Democrats, and so it's good to watch the CNN anchor next to him squirm as he explains these numbers that despite CNN's best efforts outside of Enton and a guy named Scott Jennings, the Democratic Party, there is not enough lipstick in the world you could put on this pig. And here is Enton talking about how Americans view the donkey party. Yes, donkeys, they decided to make their mascot, which is quite fitting when you think about it. This is cut one. Go.
How are voters feeling about Democrats right now?
Yeah, Democrats in the minds of the American public are lower than the Dead Sea. What are we talking about here? Well, let's take a look. The net approval rating for Democrats in Congress. You said it, Kate Baldwin. The lowest ever. Look at this. Overall, they are 55 points underwater. Their approval rating is south of 20%. It's even worse when you look at independents. Look at this. Negative 61 points. That means that their approval rating is 61 points lower than their disapproval rating. Quinnipiac has been polling this question for the better part of the 21st century. They have never found Democrats, at least those in Congress, in worse shape than they are right now.
Boom. You know why that is? You tell me what the message is of the Democratic Party right now. What is their Tea Party moment? We knew it in 2010. Republicans were, talk about Dead Sea. Talk about 61 points underwater. As dead a party as you'll ever see after the 2008 elections. They get their doors blown off by a community organizer in Barack Obama. And then, obviously, they don't control the House. They don't control the Senate. They don't control the Supreme Court. They were being called a regional party at one point. In other words, they don't apply to the country anymore, just little pockets here and there, down south primarily, deep red states. And then suddenly, 2010, this whole rebirth, this Tea Party, sweeps Democrats out of office and Republicans back into power in the House with a huge majority, by the way. And this is after Obama, again, won that election as easily as we've seen in quite some time. So that's what Democrats need to find. Like, what's your Tea Party issue? What are you going to run on? Tea Party was all about fiscal responsibility in government, despite being called racist over and over. It had nothing to do with race. It had everything to do with spend what you don't have. That makes sense to a lot of people. That's how they run their households. That's how they want the government to run. Pretty simple stuff. And Democrats right now, I try to see, all right, what is that one issue they could cling to and go to? And they appear to have landed on, we are going to save democracy from Donald Trump and the Republicans. Again, when you run a candidate like Kamala Harris, you install her without one vote from any voter and say, all right, here's your girl, vote for her based on her gender and on her race. Yeah, that's not looked upon too well. When you weaponize the justice system against your opponent in Donald Trump, all these different cases from Jack Smith and Fonnie Willis and Letitia James and Alvin Bragg, well, that may look like you're probably exploiting said justice system in order to take Donald Trump out, put him in prison. This way, you don't have to go against him in November at a ballot box where obviously Trump won every swing state in the popular vote. So when you look at Democrats, just the way they go about democracy, and when they talk about blowing up the filibuster, when they talk about adding 2 states, Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico, Washington, D.C. has barely 700,000 people living in it. Do they deserve a state? Just merge them with Virginia or Maryland. That's not a state. It's a city, and not even a big one for that matter. But of course, that would give them 2 Democratic senators in perpetuity. And then for Puerto Rico, same deal. They get 4 Democratic senators just added like that. And then, as you can see, Republicans now have a 53-47 majority in the Senate. If you add 4 Democratic senators, well, there's a very good chance that they'll never get power again because we don't see big majorities anymore. And obviously the House, Republicans have a 1-vote majority thanks to the perpetual no that is Thomas Massie. So there you go. So they talk about all this stuff, saving democracy, and Americans clearly are not buying it when you're 55 points underwater in terms of approval versus disapproval. They had abortion for about 5 minutes, but now no one's talking about that anymore. It's a settled state issue. It's the way it should be. Leave it up to voters in individual states whether they want abortion to be legal or not. And even in states like Kansas and Ohio, which at last check are quite red, even voted to keep abortion legal. So the fear mongering around that is gone. They're obviously not about the economy because they had a chance to run it for 4 years. And all they did was spend and tax and do all the things that Democrats are best of, throwing money at the problem, passing something called the Inflation Reduction Act, spending trillions of dollars to reduce inflation when it was really just one big green bill. That did nothing, by the way, only pushed up gas prices. They're for, I guess, EV mandates. Now they're not anymore. They were for defunding the police. Now they're not anymore. So they don't really have, an issue to run on. They went with the affordability thing in New Jersey and Virginia in those races last year. And the candidates, unfortunately, on the Republican side, were playing defense instead of offense, where all you had to say was they voted for the Inflation Reduction Act. They supported every Biden spending bill. And you expect them to make things affordable again? They're the reason why we're here where we are in the first place. No, by the way, prices are coming down on everything, including on gas, by the way, which is really remarkable. When you look at now, there are 15 states, I'm counting here, where you could get a gallon of gas for well under $2. I mean, that's pretty insane. People laughed at Trump when he said, I'm going to bring down gas under $2. Well, we're basically here. And the only states that have gas that's still relatively high are the stupid ones like mine in New Jersey and in California, where they have something called a gas tax, and they have all these regulations that keep gas prices higher than they absolutely should be. So yes, Democrats are the Americans view them lower than the Dead Sea. That is completely and totally accurate. Meanwhile, Tim Walz hanging on by his double, triple, chin in Minnesota. I mean, this thing is massive as far as Somalian corruption and fraud. $9 billion for a state like that, by the way. Where's $9 billion coming out of that state from? That's well above anything as far as their budgets are concerned. So this happened all under Walz's nose, or maybe he knew all along. What did you know and when did you know it? Going back to Watergate. I mean, when you have this kind of mass fraud going on, how does the governor not know? So you have 2 options here. He's either stupid, which is entirely plausible, or just look the other way because maybe all these organizations, Somali organizations, were helping to elect Democrats throughout the state, including him. Because when you look at the donations from all these Somali groups, no money to Republicans, all to Democrats. So quid pro quo. Again, just asking questions here. I got a microphone. I'm going to use it. Here's Tim Walz anyway saying he ain't going anywhere. This is cut 2. Go.
Their idea of improving this state is being a parrot for Donald Trump, agreeing to everything that he agreed with. Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. It ain't happening. I'm not going anywhere. And you can make all your requests for me to resign over my dead body. Will that happen? I will fight this thing till the very end to make this state better. And the question that I think they need to decide is when did the guy in the White House resign?
What? When's Trump going to resign over Somalian fraud in Minnesota for what he did? What did he do besides stick the DOJ on your ass? I mean, come on, man. To quote another president. I'm saving that, by the way. Elias, my great producer, please save that clip because I'll put $25 on Walz resigning before he finishes his term because it's going to get that bad and it's going to go directly back to him. That is the prediction here. So not resigning over his dead body. That's going to be funny to watch. No question about it. Anyway, I am Joe Concha. This is the Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday morning show. Back with more in just a moment.
It's the Joe Concha Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday morning show. It's the Joe Concha Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday morning show. Now, here's Joe Concha.
Just some incredible stats, folks, shared by Caroline Levitt this week. I'll quote her. Right now, immigration, customs enforcement, ICE officers are facing a 1,200% increase in assaults. 3,200 increase in, this is a very key two words here, vehicle rammings, and an 8,000% increase in death threats. Think about the stress that these federal officers are under. Forget, I guess what should be the hard part, which is actually finding and deporting violent criminals in this country, murderers, rapists, child molesters, child traffickers, sex traffickers, getting them out of the country. Okay, but then you have to deal with all these protesters and agitators like we saw in Minneapolis this week. Diane Good, 37 years old, mother of three, whatever reason, dropped off her kids at school, like I drop off my kids at school, elementary, middle school in my case, and then decided to go to a staging area where ICE was conducting operations, blocked their vehicles with her car. Remember, if you see that video, she's facing sideways for some reason. And then ICE officers came over to her and obviously were likely going to first, obviously check her identification, make sure this wasn't a bad actor in terms of either a terrorist or somebody who would do harm to these officers. And instead of her listening, first, her boyfriend gets out of the truck so he could film what's going on. So obviously, this was meant to incite in an effort to maybe induce officers into doing something that they're caught on video, then see they're all bad, they're all racist, they're all the secret police, they're all the Gestapo, and look what they're doing to this poor woman. And instead, she decides that when they tell her to stop and to hand over her license, she says, you know what, I'm going to take off now, while an ICE officer is at the hood of that car. And there's several angles on this, and depending on your ideology and how you vote is the angle that you choose to accept. I choose to accept the one that shows the ICE officer getting hit by the car from the side. With the ICE officer in front of it, then she takes off, he gets out of the way but is still clipped by the car, and then obviously you have to open fire. That's what they're trained to do in that moment. If you're not trained, if you hear that, hey, there's a 3,200% increase in vehicle rammings of ICE agents in this country, obviously you think, okay, suddenly I could be a target next. We saw what happened in Nice, France, years ago, where ISIS used just a truck. No explosives in them, just a guy who's willing to be a suicide truck guy who's going to drive over people and killed dozens of people at a crowded plaza in Nice. And then obviously what happened last year in New Orleans on New Year's Eve. Bourbon Street, small street, cobblestone. No sidewalks or anything like that. And this guy just goes right through a barrier and just mows down people. Vehicles can be used as deadly weapons, and that appeared to be the case here. And even if you say, well, Diane Good, the deceased, was just trying to get away. Well, you don't do that. You get pulled over by a cop in a small town. You get your license, get your registration insurance, you hand it over. You said, I'm sorry, officer. Is there anything else I can provide you? Anything I can do? And you're as polite as possible. You show your hands, and you wait it out. And she decided that she was going to put on a big show and hit an ICE officer. Not cleanly. He didn't roll over the windshield, but he could have. And unfortunately, she lost her life. And now there's a 6-year-old that's orphaned for no good reason. But now we see Democrats and the media, most of it anyway, calling this murder, calling her an innocent victim. Sorry, it ain't going to fly. And this, again, I talked at the top of the show. What do Democrats run on? They run on this. They run on grievance. They run on victimhood. And they run on ICE is racist. Donald Trump is racist. Enough. We've been hearing it for 10 years. It ain't flying anymore. Also this week, we had the anniversary. It's like the Super Bowl for MS Now and CNN and every Democrat who was so traumatized that day by what happened, including Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Congresswoman, 14th District, New York, who says that not only did she think she was going to be murdered that day by a mob, but she also thought that she would be raped. This is cut number 4. Hope you're sitting down. Go.
I didn't think that I was just going to be killed. I thought other things were going to happen to me as well.
So what sounds like what you're telling me right now is that you didn't only think that you were going to die, you thought you were going to be raped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I was.
Yeah. Okay. Here's one little problem. AOC wasn't at the Capitol that day. The mob wasn't coming for her because she was nowhere near it. There is a whole underground hallway, if you've been there, and I've been there, that goes on. It's like the Mall of America, as far as it's like being in an airport, basically, right? When you have to get from like one terminal to another and how long you have to walk in some situations. So there's the Capitol. There's offices that are at the Capitol, also underground as well. And then there's a hallway that goes on for many city blocks. And then there's another building. By the way, you have to go through all points of security there too, where AOC was. No one was coming for her because she was nowhere near there. But this is what she does. And if you notice during that clip, there's ominous music playing in the background. Well, of course, that's from a CNN documentary calling Being AOC. Being AOC. And of course, Dana Bash just sits there and lets her spew this BS without challenging her on the, hey, you weren't even at the Capitol that day, were you? Uh-huh. So that's what January 6th was all about. Again, on a loop that we'll have to live with for the rest of our life. It was a horrible riot that got out of control. But let's stop saying, as Eric Swalwell did this year, that what happened January 6th was worse than 9/11 in Pearl Harbor. Go F yourself, dude. Go F yourself. I was in New York that day. 3,000 people dead, not only here, but Pennsylvania and Washington, D.C. To remotely compare those two, this guy wants to be governor? Screw you. Anyway, Chuck Schumer, boy, he really wanted Maduro in 2020. No question about it. Here's Chuck Schumer from 6 years ago talking about how we must end Maduro's regime and Trump's doing nothing. This was during Trump's first term. Cut 11, go.
And the president brags about his Venezuela policy?
Mm-hmm.
Give us a break.
A break, baby.
He hasn't brought an end to the Maduro regime. The Maduro regime is more powerful today and more entrenched today than it was when the president began.
In other words, Chuck saying to Trump, do something. So Trump does something. Snatch and grab. Gets Maduro back here. He'll be in jail likely for the rest of his life, along with his lovely wife. However, here is Chuck Schumer just this week on ABC saying that, what did Trump do? Why did he do this? Well, we're going to make sure he can't do anything again after we told him to do something. This is cut number 12. Go.
So what can the Congress do about it is the next question.
Well, the next question is very simple, and that is that we have the War Powers Act. That's a privilege resolution, which means the Republicans can't block it. Tim Kaine and I and Rand Paul are sponsors of it. It's going to come to the floor this week. And if it is voted for, if it's voted positively in both houses, then the president can't do another thing in Venezuela.
Great. So sure enough, it did come to the floor. And then Lisa Murkowski, Democrat. I'm sorry, Republican Alaska. Susan Collins, Democrat. Republican Maine. And of course, Rand Paul, the Tom Massey of the Senate. It got over the finish line. So now they say, I guess, that Trump can't do anything more in Venezuela, but it doesn't really matter because we're not going to take any more military action. Now Maduro is seized and the oil will be next. And that's the way it should be. Not seized, but distributed fairly where the Venezuelan people can be enriched by the very liquid gold that they have underneath, the black gold they have underneath their own territory, their own country. And they've lived in poverty long enough. 8 million fled the country, the biggest humanitarian crisis we have seen in modern times. Give the money back made from oil to the Venezuelan people, then open the market outside to just that oil goes to China and Russia and Iran. And trust me, oil prices are going to go down even more. Gas prices are going to be looking at 99 cents in some states soon, just like we're back in the 1980s. Anyway, this is Joe Concha. This is the Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday morning show. Greg Jarrett, Fox News, coming up next.
It's the Joe Concha Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday morning show. It's the Joe Concha Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday morning show. Now, here's Joe Concha.
And welcome back, everybody. All right, let's bring in Greg Jarrett. He is a legal and political analyst for the Fox News Channel, author of Trial of the Century. You can order that on Amazon. Also, the Constitution of the United States and other patriotic documents collected and explained by the aforementioned Greg Jarrett. Greg, how are you?
I'm well. Thanks, Joe, for having me on.
Of course. So I was curious, well, not curious. Great column, by the way. It's on foxnews.com, doing gangbusters, according to my people who track these things as far as clicks and overall just viral stuff. Greg Jarrett's latest one is, if Tim Walz is charged in Minnesota fraud scandal, his best defense is incompetence. And I love the fact that you start off the column, Greg, by quoting Tim Walz himself by saying, quote, "I hereby plead incompetence and stupidity," unquote. So he once did say that, and that may end up being his defense, I guess, Greg. Tell us more about the story.
I mean, let's call it the knucklehead defense. You'll recall famously that during the vice presidential debate, he confessed that he is a knucklehead. No truer words were spoken. Those are his words, not mine. So he has a reputation for incompetence, and I go through all the incidents of it in my column. And look, there's no evidence that he was directly involved with the Minnesota Somalian fraudsters. However, his actions to protect them, to go after whistleblowers, to discredit all of the fraud reports that were well documented, brings the potential of criminal charges against him, in particular, conspiracy to defraud, aiding and abetting, and accessory after the fact. If you have a duty as a public official to pursue people who are committing fraud, and instead what you do is cover it up and essentially run a protection racket for them, you're an accessory.
Yes.
And so, look, the DOJ has sent a phalanx of lawyers to Minnesota, and I think they're going to inevitably weigh, should we bring charges against Tim Walz? And frankly, I think they should.
And they probably will, from what it looks like. And we're talking to Greg Jarrett, Fox News. That's the thing, right? I mean, you have Walz basically blaming white supremacy or, racism for going after. Again, it's almost all Somalis that are running this fraud scandal to the tune of 9 to anywhere, maybe up to $20 billion. Unthinkable numbers, especially within one state government. And I always go back to this, Greg. What if this occurred not in Minnesota, but in the great state of Florida or Texas? And you had Ron DeSantis or Greg Abbott as governor. I have a feeling we'd see a lot more media coverage around that.
Oh, absolutely. And look, in Minnesota, the local media there are basically progressive liberal Democrat handmaidens. And so, there was this very clever sort of quid pro quo going on. Tim Walz and other Democrats viewed the large Somalian community as gold in terms of votes. And so instead of taking action against those committing fraud, they sort of protected them in this culture of permissible fraud. They gave them a get-out-of-jail-free card. And, that is a protection racket. It's quid pro quo. Instead of the currency being money, the currency was votes. We won't go after you if you support us with your votes.
And we're talking to Greg Jarrett, and that's exactly right. The Somalians basically decide elections in Minnesota, especially Minneapolis, which might as well be called Mogadishu at this point. And we're talking to there's an alliteration there. It kind of works. Legal and political analyst for the Fox News Channel, Greg Jarrett. I have to get your take because this has been the dominant topic of the past few days, quite frankly, Greg, as far as what we saw in Minnesota. And I was always waiting for the body cam footage to come out. And ICE agents don't wear body cams. I almost wish they would at this point, given everything we're seeing with all these ramming attempts against them, the threats through the roof. They've even been shot at as well. Very little media coverage around ICE agents being attacked. But now we see what happened to a woman, a 37-year-old woman who disobeyed orders from ICE agents, was instructed by her wife, drive, baby, drive. You see it on video. She hits the gas. She clearly hits the ICE officer. He wasn't seriously injured, but at the same time, at that point, when there is a 3,200% uprise increase in rammings or attempted rammings of ICE officers in this country in the last year, yeah, you're on the lookout for that because, as you know, Greg, a vehicle can be a deadly weapon. But after seeing that one definitive video, and I call it a definitive video because there appears to be no ambiguity as far as what happened, I'm still seeing over the weekend, Greg, I'm seeing Democratic lawmakers and even those on the left in media saying that this proves nothing. He still shouldn't have shot that woman. And at the same time, she was just trying to. Dan Goldman of New York, a congressman, said she was just trying to leave and she was murdered. That's what he told MS Now, trying to leave. Literally, the ICE agents are yelling, "Get out of the car." That's not leaving unless you're leaving the car, Greg.
No, it's fleeing police, which is a crime.
Yes.
And look, she made a lot of bad choices here. And when you make those bad choices, terrible things can happen. And that's really what happened here. But you're right. This video corroborates what the feds have been saying, that the driver, Renee Good, and her wife were taunting ICE. They were blocking ICE vehicles. They were part of the resistance. And then she was told repeatedly to get out of her car, and instead of complying with police as the law requires, regardless of whether you think the stop is justified, she refused. And instead, she guns the engine, pushes the accelerator with the officer either right in front of her or perpendicular. It's a little bit difficult to tell from his video, but it certainly looks and sounds like he was struck, which is, of course, contrary to what people like Mayor Jacob Frey and Tim Walz have been claiming. And you're so right, Joe, to point out that automobiles are deadly weapons. When you press the accelerator, it's the equivalent of pulling the trigger of a gun.
Yeah.
Dangerous instrumentalities that can kill people. So the argument for justifiable self-defense does seem credible, and I don't think the feds, who really have supremacy and jurisdiction, will bring charges.
And we're seeing that the FBI, Greg Jarrett, they obviously have their investigation going on. But now we're seeing Minnesota officials led by Keith Ellison, who has his own legal problems right now. He's saying, no, we're going to run a local investigation of this as well. It's interesting that, here you have Minnesota officials like Walz, like Mayor Jacob Frey, like Ellison, saying that they will not cooperate with ICE in any way, shape, or form up until this point. And now suddenly they're the ones who are going to investigate the very agency that they would not support. Quite the contradiction. In the end, who wins from a legal perspective? The legal analysis, the final conclusion of the FBI and the feds, or local government?
The federal government prevails.
Okay.
And that's in the Constitution. The state may try to bring charges, as Tim Walz seemed to vow. Well, Timmy, good luck with that. Because a federal officer is immune from state prosecution as long as he's acting within the scope of his lawful federal duties. And stopping a motorist who is obstructing ICE, well, that's a lawful duty. And the Supremacy Clause gives federal law priority and precedent over state law. And in fact, there's a statute, I think it's 1442, that would likely move any state prosecution to federal court.
Greg Jarrett, in his opinion piece, doing gangbusters on FoxNews.com. If Walz is charged in Minnesota fraud scandal, his best defense is incompetence. Go to FoxNews.com, the #1 news site in the world. So a lot of traffic there, and Greg only helps in that cause. And Greg, we really appreciate you joining us on the weekend. Thanks so much.
My pleasure, Joe. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, sir. And we'll be back to wrap up this puppy on the Joe Concha Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday morning show in just a moment.
It's the Joe Concha Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday morning show. It's the Joe Concha Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday morning show. Now, here's Joe Concha.
back, everybody. That was a fast hour, wasn't it? I hope you're having fun on this Sunday morning. I haven't done brunch in a long time. That's a thing, right? When I lived in Hoboken, you went out late, right? Like let's put it this way. You left your apartment to go out at 10 o'clock. Like that was the starting time. Pretty crazy stuff. And then you get home around 2:30. And then you sleep till about 10:30. So, breakfast is done at that point by the time you shower and get out. So it's kind of like a combination of, what is brunch, right? It's not quite breakfast. It's not quite lunch, but you get a piece of cantaloupe at the end. You don't get everything you would get in a breakfast, but you get a good meal. That's brunch. So I used to do that in Hoboken a lot. Places like the Madison, Legion Cafe. For those of you listening in the city, you know those places quite well. But now I move out to the suburbs and brunch really isn't a thing. So maybe I'll do that next week. Maybe I'll grab after I do this show a little brunch. And I don't know why I shared that, but this is a show where we share everything. Very, very candid. It's from the heart. Also from the heart, my friends, to all the Jet fans out there, I'm just so sorry. It's just so easy to dunk on you when you haven't won a Super Bowl since 1969, right? January, Miami, Joe Namath, shirtless, pool, guarantees he's going to win. Colts are 18-point favorites. And then not only the Jets cover, they went outright and they went by easily. They're up 16-0, I believe, in that game at one point. They ended up winning 16-7. And Namath, since then, has been the only Jet quarterback to ever win a Super Bowl. In fact, the only Jet quarterback to ever go to a Super Bowl. Forget the Jets going there a couple times like the Bills or the Vikings. Oh, no. They haven't even been back in what's 69? 57 years? A New York team? Greatest city in the world, used to be anyway. Pre-de Blasio, definitely pre-Memdani. But still, how? Anyway, we once almost had, I'm a Bears fan, but fine. I root for the Jets as a side team because I just feel so sorry for them. But it was 26 years ago, almost today, that Bill Belichick, yes, that Bill Belichick that won 6 Super Bowls with the Patriots. You could say Tom Brady won those Super Bowls, but no. I got to think Belichick had a lot to do with that. A great defensive mind. Obviously won some Super Bowls as a defensive coordinator under Bill Parcells with the Giants as well. But here is Belichick resigning as Jets coach before one practice, before he even met the team, obviously before one game. He was there for about 5 minutes, looked around and said, I'm not staying here. Oh, boy. Cut 5, go.
Due to the various uncertainties surrounding my position as it relates to the team's new ownership, I've decided to resign as the head coach of the New York Jets.
And that was it. He was coach one day and the next day was gone. And that was that. And then obviously the Patriots went on to be the dynasty of the 21st century, right? They went to the Super Bowl 9 times. 9 times during Belichick's career there. They won 6, lost 2 to Eli Manning, which is still amazing to me, and then 1 to the Eagles, but still, to go to the Super Bowl 9 times. Used to be a big deal when the Bills went 4. 9. That was your coach. Obviously, Tom Brady had a lot to do with that. And then Brady even went on to the Bucs, team that almost never wins Super Bowls. In his first year there, he wins a Super Bowl there too. The guy still has great hair, great teeth. He annoys me. He's like Tom Cruise. He's going to be 70. He's still going to look like the way he does now. I don't know where he goes or what he does, but whatever doctor, so to speak, that he's seeing, I want in. Anyway, I got to share this with you because it's really, really remarkable. This is from that hearing that went on in Minnesota regarding rampant Minnesota fraud. And you had Democrats going up there. Now, I just don't understand why they just don't take the L once in a while. There are some things that simply you cannot defend, like Joe Biden's brain turning to applesauce that we knew for years. They defended that to the end, called all the videos of him shaking hands with the air or not knowing how to get off a stage, despite being a politician for 50 years. You'd think you know where exit stage left is by now. Wouldn't know that. Literally had conversations with world leaders who have been dead for decades. Couldn't remember the name of cabinet members. Fell up the stairs at Air Force One, fell down the stairs at Air Force One, fell during graduation ceremonies and off his bike. After all that, they still said that this guy deserves another 4 years, and he is as sharp as John Nash and has the legs of Lamar Jackson, right? This guy, we can't keep up with him, Jen Psaki used to say. It's just impossible. They go down these roads of defending things where just like what we saw in Minneapolis, this was murder of an innocent woman. No, she tried to run over somebody and got shot as a result of doing it. Or even if she didn't try, she was trying to escape arrest or at least being looked at as far as license, registration, insurance, and clipped an ICE officer. Either way, it's horrible that it happened. It is a tragedy, but legal, awful, but legal. That's what happened there. Yet they defend it. And now, obviously, they're trying to defend this fraud in Minnesota, which just keeps getting worse and worse the more you peel off this horrible rancid onion. And now they're doing the only thing that Democrats know how to do in this situation, and that is play the race card from the bottom of the deck. This is cut number 10. Go.
Large-scale Somali immigration make Minnesota stronger or weaker?
Certainly stronger.
Certainly stronger. Do you know what percentage of Somali-headed households in Minnesota are on food stamps?
No.
54%. Do you know what that number is for native Minnesota-headed households?
Not much.
Well, to be clear, a majority of the...
It's 7%. There's a big difference between 54% and 7%, is there not?
Excuse me, sir, could I...
So in other words, the Somalian community makes us so much stronger, except a solid majority of them are on food stamps. In other words, taking your taxpayer money or taking money and opening up child care centers that don't have kids and opening up autism centers that do not exist. Here is cut number 7, by the way, Emily Randall. She is a representative in Congress, unfortunately. And here she is again saying that, the problem isn't the Somalian community. It's really, white guys. Cut 7, go.
We can trot out all of the data that we want to create the sense that there is a bad guy. There is a bad group of people. There are folks who are not among us. There are folks who are other. And I think we should spend a lot more time looking at ourselves, looking at American citizens, looking at white men.
White men? Yeah, of course. Let's look at the white guys who have nothing to do with this. It's just so old already. I can't take it, and I cannot take this. Jacob Frey, the mayor of Minneapolis, this human broomstick, looks like David Hogg in 30 years. This is what we're going to get. And Hogg will probably be mayor of some ridiculous NFL city here because they just elect socialists and idiots. This is the same guy who literally wanted to defund the police, the same guy who does half his speeches. He does it in English and then he does it in Somali. This is pandering, all caps with a capital P, the size of the Empire State Building. But anyway, here's Jacob Frey talking tough to ice by dropping an F-bomb because that's what Democrats do to sound authentic. It's cut 9, number go.
There's little I can say, again, that'll make this situation better, but I do have a message for our community, for our city.
Yeah.
And I have a message for ICE.
Ooh.
To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis.
It's funny. He doesn't say to the Somalian community, get the F out of Minneapolis, despite you stealing billions of dollars from our coffers. Nope, will not do that. But he will talk tough to ICE. And the funny thing is that it's not funny. It's effing sad that there are enough Democratic voters in Minnesota, not so much Minnesota, but basically in Minneapolis, the county that surrounds Minneapolis. Basically, Minnesota is a red state outside of that county, but it's so concentrated with Democrats there that they're able to eke out wins. And Donald Trump nearly won Minnesota in 2024. It was only a 4-point race, despite the fact that Tim Walz was on the ticket. In fact, Walz used to be a congressman, and Trump won the district that Walz used to represent. So that is on the verge of tipping, because outside of Minneapolis, and I know that's a big outside of, Minnesota is basically Iowa meets Wisconsin, right? Except Iowa, doesn't really have a major city that a lot of Democrats could congregate in. So that's a 13-point state to Republicans. Wisconsin can go back and forth. But overall, that's Minnesota, and it's going to fall soon because I think enough people are going to have enough and leave that city. I mean, with the weather enough, why wouldn't you? Or the Vikings, speaking of the Jets, never won a Super Bowl also. They got to 4. That was 1,000 years ago. And by the way, if I may say, ever since the Vikings decided to not play outdoors anymore and take away that huge advantage that the Packers have and that the Bills have when you go up to a place like Minneapolis in January and it's, sub-zero weather and you're the Rams or the 49ers or some dome team, huge advantage. What do the Vikings do? They build a dome. Smart. They haven't been back to a Super Bowl ever since they built the dome. And on their second one, by the way, just to put that in perspective. As for the Giants, by the way, just sign John Harbaugh already. Give him whatever he wants. He won 2 Super Bowls. They went to the playoffs nearly every year, the Ravens, and just because their kicker missed a field goal at the end of the Steeler game last week, that's why he doesn't have a job. So what? If the kicker makes the kick, then Harbaugh's a good enough coach to keep his job? Makes no sense whatsoever. Anyway, you're not going to find a coach like that out there that's available. This is almost like a Bill Parcells moment at this point. I'm not saying he's Parcells, but as close as you're going to get, sign this guy. But the money here is that he ends up in Miami. And wouldn't you too, at your stage of your career, go warm and take a team that hasn't won a Super Bowl since 72 but it has some cachet to it. If he saves the Dolphins, then Harbaugh, absolutely. He's already in the Hall of Fame, but I think, first ballot kind of thing. Anyway, this is Joe Concha. Ending on a sports note, because that's what we do here. We go all over the place as far as our topics. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Joe Concha Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. Back next week, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. In the meantime, 2 words for you. Bye-bye.
It's the Joe Concha Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday morning show.
Every week, the Payne family cuts straight to the real financial story.
The one question, Bob, everyone's asking is, are we in an artificial intelligence bubble? You've been through boom and bust. What do you think?
No hype, no myths. Just what actually matters to your money.
Does feel very similar to what we experienced in the 90s. Where are we, though? Are we in 1995, 1997, 1999?
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.